The year was 1803. The South, a land of sprawling plantations and simmering tensions, welcomed a son destined for greatness and tragedy. His name, etched in the annals of history, was Albert Sidney Johnston. Born in the heart of Kentucky, his life would become a tempestuous saga, mirroring the tumultuous era he inhabited. He would rise to become a shining star of the Confederacy, a beacon of hope in the darkest hours of a nation divided. His story, however, does not begin on the battlefields that would later etch his name in legend. It begins in the gentle embrace of the South, amidst the scent of magnolias and the rhythmic strumming of banjos. It's a story woven into the very fabric of a young nation grappling with its identity, a nation teetering on the brink of a storm that would forever alter its course. Johnston's legacy is a complex tapestry of brilliance and bravery, intertwined with the poignant tragedy of a life cut short. He was a man of unwavering conviction, a soldier's soldier who embodied the spirit of the Confederacy, but he was also a devoted husband and father, a man of deep emotions who understood the heavy cost of war. Join us now as we journey back in time, peeling back the layers of history to uncover the man behind the legend. This is the story of Albert Sidney Johnston, a son of the South, a soldier of unwavering loyalty, and a general forever etched in the heart of the Confederacy. Albert Sidney Johnston's roots ran deep in the soil of the South. Born in Washington, Kentucky, on February 2, 1803, he was the youngest son of Dr. John Johnston and Abigail Harris. His father, a respected physician and veteran of the Revolutionary War, hailed from a prominent Virginia family. His mother, a woman of strong will and unwavering faith, instilled in young Albert a deep sense of honor and duty. The Johnston family, though not wealthy by aristocratic standards, commanded respect and influence. Their home, a testament to Southern hospitality, was often filled with the lively chatter of politicians, intellectuals, and military men. It was in this intellectually stimulating environment that Albert's sharp mind and thirst for knowledge were first kindled. Even as a child, Albert exhibited a quiet strength and natural leadership that drew others to him. Stories abound of his childhood bravery, his unwavering loyalty to his siblings, and his innate ability to command attention without ever demanding it. He possessed an aura of quiet confidence that hinted at the great destiny that awaited him. But beneath the surface of the charming and charismatic young man lurked a shadow of melancholy. Tragedy struck early in Albert's life, casting a long shadow that would forever shape his worldview. The loss of his mother at a tender age left an unfillable void, a wound that time could never fully heal. This early encounter with grief instilled in him a profound understanding of life's fragility, a somber awareness that would later define his leadership in the face of unimaginable loss on the battlefield. At 14, Albert attended Transylvania University in Kentucky. Founded after the American Revolution, it was a beacon of learning. Johnston excelled in mathematics, history, and military strategy. He met Jefferson Davis, future Confederate president. Their bond would endure through decades of war. After graduating, Johnston went to West Point. West Point was a crucible for future leaders. Johnston thrived, graduating 8th in his class. Upon graduating from West Point, Johnston received his commission as a second lieutenant. His early career took him from New York City to remote western outposts. However, fate had other plans for the young officer. In 1829, his wife Henrietta succumbed to illness, leaving him devastated. Seeking solace, Johnston resigned in 1834 and set his sights on Texas. Drawn by adventure, he joined the Texan cause with zeal. His leadership quickly earned him respect and admiration. Johnston's legend took shape, synonymous with courage and tactical brilliance. Johnston's time in Texas wasn't a continuous march towards revolution. In 1832, he took a leave of absence from the Texan army. The Black Hawk War erupted, and Johnston couldn't resist the call to arms. He served under General Henry Atkinson, participating in key engagements. Johnston's experience in the Black Hawk War was formative. He carried the lessons learned back to Texas, where a greater destiny awaited. The year was 1836. Texas, after a hard-fought struggle, had finally won its independence from Mexico. For Albert Sidney Johnston, the architect of many of the newly formed republic's military victories, it was a time of triumph mixed with profound personal loss. The shadow of Henrietta's death still lingered, a constant reminder of love lost too soon. Yet amidst the echoes of war and the pain of remembrance, Johnston found solace in the most unexpected of places, the arms of another. Eliza Griffin, a woman of remarkable spirit and unwavering devotion, captured his heart. Their love story, blossoming in the aftermath of revolution, was a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit to find hope even in the darkest of times. Eliza, like Johnston, came from a family steeped in Southern tradition and values. Her father, a prominent planter and politician, recognized in Johnston a kindred spirit, a man of honor and unwavering principle. Their union, blessed by both families, was more than just a marriage. It was a merging of two powerful Texas dynasties. Their happiness, however, was tempered by the harsh realities of life in the fledgling republic. Texas, still reeling from the war, faced constant threats from Mexico and internal strife. Johnston, ever the soldier, knew that his services were needed to secure the hard-won independence he had fought so valiantly to achieve. Even before the official declaration of Texan independence on March 2, 1836, skirmishes between Texan settlers and Mexican forces were commonplace. Johnston, now a senior officer in the Texan Army, found himself thrust into the heart of the conflict. His experience in the Black Hawk War, coupled with his natural leadership abilities, proved invaluable as the ragtag Texan forces faced a larger, better-equipped Mexican army. One battle in particular would cement Johnston's reputation as a military genius and earn him a place in the pantheon of Texas heroes, the Battle of San Jacinto. On April 21, 1836, near the present-day city of Houston, Texan forces under the command of General Sam Houston launched a surprise attack on the unsuspecting Mexican army led by General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna. Johnston, serving as Houston's chief of staff, played a pivotal role in planning and executing the audacious attack. His understanding of the terrain, combined with his keen tactical mind, allowed the Texans to outmaneuver the larger Mexican force and secure a decisive victory. The Battle of San Jacinto lasted a mere 18 minutes, but resulted in the capture of Santa Anna and the end of Mexican rule in Texas. The victory at San Jacinto not only secured Texan independence, but also propelled Johnston into the national spotlight. He became a symbol of Texan bravery and determination, his name synonymous with the hard-won fight for freedom. With the guns of revolution silenced, the daunting task of building a new nation from the ashes of war began. Johnston, having proven himself on the battlefield, was called upon to serve the nascent Republic of Texas in a different capacity, as a statesman. His transition from soldier to politician, though seemingly abrupt, was a natural progression for a man of his intellect and commitment to public service. In 1837, Johnston was appointed as the Secretary of War for the Republic of Texas. This position placed him at the heart of the fledgling government, tasked with the Herculean task of organizing and equipping the new nation's defenses. It was a role that required diplomacy, political savvy, and a deep understanding of the challenges facing the young republic. Johnston's tenure as Secretary of War was marked by both successes and setbacks. He faced constant pressure from various factions within Texas, each vying for power and influence. The threat of Mexican invasion loomed large, and the republic's finances were in disarray. Despite these obstacles, Johnston worked tirelessly to build a strong and efficient military, capable of defending Texas's hard-won independence. His accomplishments during this period were significant. He oversaw the establishment of a permanent army, secured vital supplies and equipment, and implemented a system of forts and outposts to protect the republic's borders. However, political infighting and a lack of resources hampered his efforts. Frustrated by the limitations placed upon him and disillusioned by the petty squabbles that plagued the government, Johnston resigned his post in 1840. Johnston's resignation did not end his service to Texas. He became a planter and surveyor in the Brazos River Valley. Yet, storm clouds gathered on the horizon. The annexation of Texas reignited tensions with Mexico. The Rio Grande, or the Nueces River, a major contention. President Polk ordered General Taylor to the Rio Grande. The Mexican-American War was about to begin. In September 1846, Johnston and his Texas volunteers found themselves embroiled in one of the most brutal battles of the Mexican-American War, the Battle of Monterey. This three-day siege, fought in the streets and plazas of the city, pitted American forces against a determined Mexican defense led by General Pedro de Ampudia. Johnston, always at the forefront of the fighting, led his men with characteristic bravery. He exposed himself to enemy fire repeatedly, rallying his troops and directing their movements with a calmness that belied the chaos swirling around him. His Texans, inspired by their commander's courage, fought with a ferocity that earned the grudging respect of their Mexican adversaries. The Battle of Monterey was a costly victory for the Americans, marked by heavy casualties on both sides. Johnston himself was wounded twice, shot in the thigh and grazed by a bullet to the head. Yet, through it all, he never wavered, his spirit unbroken, his determination to see the battle through unwavering. His actions at Monterey and in subsequent engagements during the war solidified Johnston's reputation as a skilled and courageous leader. He earned the admiration of his superiors, including General Zachary Taylor, who praised his gallantry and good conduct. Johnston, once a soldier fighting for the independence of a fledgling republic, had proven himself a capable leader on a much larger stage. The Mexican-American War ended in 1848 with the signing of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. The United States emerged victorious. Its territory significantly expanded. Johnston, hailed as a hero, returned home to Texas, his reputation as a soldier and leader firmly established. He resumed his life as a planter, but the war had left an indelible mark on his soul. The years following the war were a time of growing tension and division within the United States. The issue of slavery, long a source of contention, became increasingly polarizing. The debate over the expansion of slavery into the newly acquired territories pushed the nation closer to the brink of civil war. Johnston, like many Southerners, watched these developments with growing unease. He was a man of his time, raised in a society where slavery was an accepted part of life. While not a vocal advocate for slavery, he believed in the South's right to self-determination and viewed the abolitionist movement as a threat to the Southern way of life. These were years of introspection and difficult choices for Johnston. He loved the United States, having served with distinction in its army. Yet, he also felt a deep connection to Texas and the South, a shared history and culture that bound him to his adopted homeland. As the storm clouds of secession gathered, Johnston found himself torn between two worlds, his loyalties tested as never before. The year 1860 marked a turning point in American history. The election of Abraham Lincoln, a staunch opponent of slavery, sent shockwaves through the South. Southern states, fearing that their way of life was under threat, began to secede from the Union. The nation so painstakingly forged just decades earlier was on the verge of being torn apart. For Johnston, the secession crisis presented an agonizing dilemma. He had sworn an oath to defend the United States Constitution, and the thought of taking up arms against his former comrades filled him with dread. Yet, he could not stand idly by while his beloved South faced what he perceived as Northern aggression. Adding to his turmoil was the fact that many of his closest friends and colleagues, many had fought alongside in the Mexican-American War, chose to remain loyal to the Union. Their decision, though painful to accept, highlighted the profound divisions that now cleaved the nation in two. In the end, Johnston's loyalty to his adopted South outweighed his allegiance to the United States. When Texas seceded from the Union in February 1861, Johnston resigned his commission in the U.S. Army, a decision that must have weighed heavily on his conscience. He knew that by choosing the Confederacy, he was choosing a path fraught with danger and uncertainty. Yet he believed that he had no other choice. He was a Southern man, born and bred, and his destiny lay with the fate of the Confederacy. With a heavy heart but unwavering resolve, Albert Sidney Johnston cast his lot with the Confederacy. His decision sent shockwaves through both North and South. In the North, he was branded a traitor, his name added to the long list of those who had betrayed their oaths to defend the Union. Yet, in the South, he was hailed as a hero, a symbol of Southern unity and defiance. The Confederate government, recognizing Johnston's military experience and strategic brilliance, offered him a commission as a general in the newly formed Confederate Army. He accepted without hesitation, his sense of duty compelling him to defend his adopted homeland against what he perceived as Northern aggression. On September 10, 1861, Johnston received his official commission as a full general in the Confederate Army. This appointment placed him among the highest-ranking military leaders in the Confederacy, second only to President Jefferson Davis himself. The weight of responsibility, the knowledge that the fate of the South rested in part on his shoulders, must have been immense. Yet, Johnston did not shy away from the challenge. He embraced his new role with characteristic zeal, throwing himself into the task of organizing and equipping the fledgling Confederate Army. He knew that the road ahead would be long and arduous, but he was determined to see the Confederacy through to victory, whatever the cost. Johnston's first order of business was to report to Richmond, Virginia, the capital of the Confederacy, to confer with President Davis and other Confederate leaders. The journey from his home in Texas to Richmond was a perilous one, fraught with danger and uncertainty. The nation was now divided, the lines between North and South clearly drawn. Travel between the two regions was difficult and dangerous, especially for someone as well known as Johnston. Union sympathizers lurked everywhere, and the threat of capture or assassination was ever present. Undeterred, Johnston embarked on his journey, traveling by train, steamboat, and even on horseback, often under assumed names to avoid detection. His route took him through the heart of the Confederacy, allowing him to witness firsthand the fervor and determination of the Southern people. Along the way, he met with local officials, inspected military installations, and addressed crowds eager to hear from one of the South's most respected military leaders. His presence, calm and reassuring, helped to bolster morale and instill confidence in the Confederate cause. Upon arriving in Richmond, Johnston met with President Davis to discuss his assignment. Davis, recognizing the importance of the Western Theater, a vast expanse encompassing the Mississippi River Valley and key states like Kentucky and Tennessee, placed Johnston in command of this crucial region. Johnston's appointment to the Western Theater was a testament to Davis's confidence in his abilities. The West, with its vast distances, sparse population, and limited infrastructure, presented unique challenges for military commanders. Yet it also offered significant opportunities for the Confederacy. Control of the Mississippi River, the South's economic lifeline, was paramount. Furthermore, the border states of Kentucky and Missouri, though officially neutral, held significant strategic value due to their industrial capacity and manpower. Johnston, with his strategic vision and understanding of logistics, was tasked with securing these vital assets for the Confederacy. His command encompassed a vast and diverse territory, stretching from the Appalachian Mountains to the Mississippi River. He faced a formidable opponent in Union General Ulysses S. Grant, a tenacious and resourceful commander who would later earn the nickname Unconditional Surrender Grant. The stage was set for a clash of titans, a struggle for control of the West that would shape the course of the Civil War. Upon assuming command in the West, Johnston faced a daunting task. The Confederate Army, hastily assembled in the wake of secession, was woefully unprepared for a protracted conflict. Many of the soldiers were untried volunteers, lacking basic training and discipline. Supplies were scarce, weapons were often outdated, and logistical networks were virtually non-existent. Johnston, drawing upon his experience in the Mexican-American War and his innate understanding of military organization, set about the task of transforming this collection of raw recruits into a cohesive and effective fighting force. He established training camps, implemented strict discipline, and worked tirelessly to secure much-needed supplies and equipment. Recognizing the importance of leadership, Johnston sought out talented officers to lead his troops. He promoted men based on merit, regardless of their social standing or political connections. He understood that the success of the Confederacy depended on the quality of its officers, as much as the bravery of its soldiers. Despite his best efforts, Johnston faced an uphill battle. The Union, with its superior industrial capacity and vast manpower reserves, could field and equip armies far more rapidly than the Confederacy. The odds were stacked against him, but Johnston remained undeterred. He knew that the fate of the South rested on his shoulders, and he was determined to do everything in his power to secure victory. In early 1862, Union forces under the command of Ulysses S. Grant launched a two-pronged offensive in the Western Theater, targeting Forts Henry and Donelson, crucial Confederate strongholds guarding the Tennessee and Cumberland rivers. The fall of these forts would open up a vital waterway into the heart of the Confederacy, threatening key cities like Nashville, Tennessee. Johnston, recognizing the strategic importance of these forts, dispatched reinforcements and urged their commanders to hold out at all costs. However, the Confederate defenses proved inadequate in the face of determined Union assaults. On February 6, 1862, Fort Henry fell to Union forces after a brief bombardment. Fort Donelson, under the command of Brigadier General John B. Floyd, held out for 3 days against repeated Union attacks, but was forced to surrender on February 16th. The loss of these forts was a major setback for the Confederacy, both strategically and in terms of morale. Johnston, though deeply disappointed by the loss of these key strongholds, refused to despair. He understood that the war was far from over, and that the Confederacy, despite its setbacks, still possessed the will and the resources to achieve victory. He immediately began to plan a strategic withdrawal, consolidating his forces and preparing for a counteroffensive. The fall of Forts Henry and Donelson forced Johnston to abandon his hopes of holding Kentucky and much of Tennessee. He ordered a strategic withdrawal southward, hoping to regroup his scattered forces and establish a new defensive line along the Memphis and Charleston Railroad, a vital supply line for the Confederacy. The retreat was a difficult and perilous one, conducted in the midst of winter, with Union forces in hot pursuit. Johnston, ever the master strategist, utilized his knowledge of the terrain and his understanding of logistics to great effect, delaying the Union advance and minimizing Confederate casualties. His skillful withdrawal, though a bitter pill to swallow for many Southerners eager for a decisive victory, was a testament to Johnston's military acumen. He understood that preserving his army, even at the cost of ceding territory, was essential for the long-term survival of the Confederacy. He knew that the war would be won or lost, not in a single battle, but through a series of campaigns, and he was determined to fight another day. Johnston's retreat culminated in the strategically important town of Corinth, Mississippi, a vital railroad junction connecting the eastern and western portions of the Confederacy. Here he consolidated his scattered forces, welcoming reinforcements from across the South and preparing for a decisive battle with Grant's advancing army. The mood in Corinth was a mixture of apprehension and determination. The Confederate soldiers, though weary from their long retreat, were eager to avenge the losses at Forts Henry and Donelson. They understood that the fate of the Confederacy might hinge on the upcoming battle, and they were determined to fight with everything they had. Johnston, ever the inspirational leader, moved among his men, bolstering their spirits and instilling in them a sense of confidence. He knew that he faced a formidable opponent in Grant, but he also knew that the element of surprise was on his side. Grant, believing Johnston to be demoralized and on the run, had grown complacent, allowing his forces to become scattered and vulnerable. As the days turned into weeks, the tension in Corinth grew palpable. Both sides prepared for the inevitable confrontation, a clash of arms that would determine the fate of the Western theater and perhaps the Confederacy itself. The calm before the storm had settled, a brief respite before the tempest of battle would be unleashed. The calm was shattered on the morning of April 6, 1862, when Confederate forces under Johnston's command launched a surprise attack on Grant's unsuspecting army camped near Shiloh Church, a small log structure near Pittsburgh Landing on the Tennessee River. The Battle of Shiloh, one of the bloodiest engagements in the Western theater, had begun. Johnston's plan was audacious but strategically sound. He intended to catch Grant off guard, driving his forces back into the Tennessee River and dealing a crippling blow to the Union war effort in the West. The Confederate attack, spearheaded by General P.G.T. Beauregard, was initially successful, catching the Union troops completely by surprise. The fighting raged throughout the day, a chaotic and brutal affair fought amidst dense woods and ravines. Confederate soldiers, fueled by a thirst for vengeance and the inspirational leadership of their officers, fought with a ferocity that shocked the Union defenders. The tide of battle seemed to be turning in favor of the Confederacy. Victory, so long elusive, seemed within grasp. Throughout the battle, Johnston led from the front, exposing himself to enemy fire repeatedly as he rallied his troops and directed their movements. He understood that his presence, his willingness to share in the dangers faced by his men, was essential for maintaining morale and ensuring victory. Clad in his dress uniform, a symbol of his authority and a target for Union sharpshooters, Johnston rode among his men, his voice a calm amidst the storm of battle. He urged them forward, his words inspiring courage in the hearts of even the most battle-hardened veterans. His courage under fire was an inspiration to all who witnessed it. He seemed to embody the spirit of the Confederacy itself, a blend of unwavering determination, quiet strength, and a deep-seated belief in the righteousness of the Southern cause. Yet, Johnston's bravery, his willingness to lead from the front, would ultimately prove to be his undoing. As he directed a charge against a stubborn Union position, a stray bullet ripped through his right leg, severing an artery. The wound, though not immediately fatal, would prove to be mortal. Johnston's staff, realizing the gravity of his wound, rushed to his side. He was carried from the battlefield, his lifeblood seeping into the soil of Tennessee. He died a short time later, his last thoughts unknown but undoubtedly filled with concern for the fate of the Confederacy he had served so faithfully. News of Johnston's death spread like wildfire through the Confederate ranks, casting a pall over the battlefield. The man who had embodied the hopes and aspirations of the South, the general who had inspired such confidence in his men, was gone. The Confederacy mourned the loss of its fallen son. Newspapers across the South eulogized Johnston as a hero, a martyr to the cause of Southern independence. His death was seen as a devastating blow to the Confederacy, depriving the South of one of its most capable military leaders at a critical juncture in the war. Albert Sidney Johnston's legacy, however, extends far beyond the battlefield. He was a man of unwavering conviction, a skilled soldier, and an inspirational leader. Though his life was cut tragically short, his impact on the course of the Civil War and on the history of the South remains significant. He is remembered as a symbol of Southern valor, a tragic hero whose ultimate sacrifice continues to resonate more than a century and a half after his death. In the aftermath of the Civil War, The memory of Albert Sidney Johnston loomed large in the Southern consciousness. He became a symbol of Southern valor, his name etched in stone and song. Monuments rose across the South, testaments to Johnston's enduring legacy. In New Orleans, a towering obelisk stands as a solemn reminder of the general. In Austin, Texas, a life-size statue graces the state capitol grounds. Johnston's story, passed down through generations, became intertwined with Confederate mythology. Poets penned verses extolling his virtues, capturing the grief of a nation. Songwriters immortalized Johnston in ballads and folk songs. Schools, libraries, and streets across the South bear Johnston's name. While Johnston's status as a Confederate icon remains largely unquestioned in the South, his military legacy has been the subject of much debate and analysis among historians. Some, pointing to his pre-war reputation and his skillful maneuvers in the early stages of the Civil War, argue that he was one of the Confederacy's most capable commanders, a strategic mastermind whose untimely death deprived the South of its best hope for victory. They highlight his daring plan at Shiloh, his ability to maintain the element of surprise and inflict heavy casualties on Grant's army as evidence of his tactical brilliance. They argue that, had he lived to see the battle through, he might have achieved a decisive victory, potentially altering the course of the war in the West. Others, however, are more critical of Johnston's performance. They point to his cautious nature, his tendency to overestimate the enemy and underestimate his own troops, as weaknesses that ultimately hampered the Confederate war effort. They argue that his decision to launch a surprise attack at Shiloh, while strategically sound in theory, was poorly executed, his troops undisciplined, and his attack plan lacking clear objectives. These historians contend that Johnston's death, while a tragedy for the Confederacy, did not significantly alter the war's outcome. They argue that the Union's superior resources, industrial capacity, and manpower would have ultimately prevailed, regardless of Johnston's presence on the battlefield.